Good evening, everyone. A call to order the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting, Richfield Municipal Center, November 19th, 2018. First item on the agenda will to be re-swear Mary Supple in as a HRA committee member.
I, Mary Supple, do solemnly swear
I, Mary Supple, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Richfield,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Richfield,
execute and discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge the duties
of the office of the HRA Commissioner of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority of the City of Richfield,
of the office of the HRA Commissioner of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority of the City of Richfield,
according to the law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
according to the law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
So help me.
So help me God. Oh, thank
And now that you're official again, I will tender the gavel.
Our next item of business is approval of the minutes of the Special City Council HRA and Planning Commission work session of October 9th, 2018, and the Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of October 15th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any corrections, changes, or additions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving both sets of minutes, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, we've approved the minutes. Next, we have approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
I would like to make an amendment
All right.
to remove item 2A off the consent agenda and move to discussion topic.
Okay, so we're going to move
Okay, there.
item 2A down to item 3, which is consideration of items that are removed from the consent calendar. Any other changes? All right, so are we okay with this agenda as amended? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, we've approved our agenda as amended. All right, next we'll move to the consent calendar. Mr. Devich.
Thank you, Chair Supple, members of the HRA. The consent calendar contains several separate items. Well, not tonight. It contains one item, which is acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved and the individual items, the item and its recommended action will also have been approved, and no further HRA action required. And so the only item left is consideration of the approval of revisions of the first-time homebuyer program guidelines. End of consent calendar.
Move the consent calendar. Second.
All right, the consent calendar has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we move the consent calendar. Next, we move to the item that we removed from the consent calendar, consideration of the adoption of a resolution authorizing the purchase of real property located at 6701 17th Avenue South, pending consideration of finding of consistency by the Richfield Planning Commission. Mr. Devich.
Again, thank you, Chair Supple. I'm going to ask John Stark to make this presentation to the HRA, and I'm happy to stand in and answer any questions on it as well.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair Supple and Commissioners. The property at 6701 17th Avenue South is located on the corner of 17th Avenue and remaining half block of 67th Street East. This home is the only home served by this 145-foot stretch of road. The owner of 6701 17th Avenue South has expressed an interest in selling the property. The purchase of this home would allow the city to vacate and remove this section of 67th Street, thereby eliminating ongoing maintenance, pavement, plowing, etc. In discussions with our Public Works crew today, we followed up with them a little bit on that. And there's also issues with backing. It's not just the cost of snow plowing, it's the maneuvering. It takes quite a bit of time and effort to make that movement, and similar concerns. in the unlikely event that emergency services would need to go down there. Additionally, the purchase of the home and vacation of the street could potentially provide an area for additional landscaping that would increase screening around the pool and dog area that are part of the Chamberlain Apartments project. Removal of this remnant of 67th Street is in line with the number of policies identified in the comprehensive plan. Once purchased, a new garage that is accessed via 17th Avenue could be constructed and the home resold or rented. Staff engaged relocation specialists from Evergreen Land Services to help with this process. Based on valuations by the city's appraiser and the landowner's appraiser, a final offer contingent on the HRA's approval of $310,000 has been made to the property owner. And I would say that offer actually has not been made. We were waiting for this consideration prior to making that offer. This number includes the land and building and relocation costs as defined by the Federal Uniform Relocation Act, including price differential, moving, and anticipated closing costs. Staff viewed this as a reasonable offer, given that there are long-term benefits to the permanent removal of this stretch of road. The resolution allows staff to spend up to $2,500 on miscellaneous administrative costs that may arise. If purchased, the current owner would be permitted to occupy the home until April 1st, 2019, to avoid moving over the winter months. And with that, I would stand with for any questions you might have.
Mr. Devich?
Yes, and I'd like to add, I mean, there's a lot of really good reasons to take that piece of property. Whenever you have a stub road like that it's not only the plowing of it and the difficulty of doing that. I mean, that's another street that we have to end up maintaining. And to maintain a street, just to have an access to somebody's driveway at the very end of it, when you could acquire the property, turn the garage the other way, and have a driveway coming onto the avenue, and the contractor would work with us to eliminate the whole street and the curb and everything with it. You know, in the long term, it makes all the sense in the world to do that.
All right, so that we can go ahead and discuss this, I'll make the motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the purchase of real property located at 6701 17th Avenue South, pending consideration of a finding of consistency by the Richfield Planning Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so now we can discuss it. Commissioner Vrees Daniels, you wanted to ask some questions?
I had some questions I had sent to Mr. Stark there beforehand. It just threw up some red flags for me about just kind of the reasoning why, so I just wanted to talk through them. One, you cite not only just the general ease of vacating the road, but yearly costs. I'm wondering what those yearly costs are for this road, on top of it would be great to have, but what are those yearly costs, if that factored into that dollar amount?
Yeah, we talked to the Public Works Department. You know, they, obviously we consulted with them prior to writing the staff report and got their recommendation to take this action. Their answer was that they don't quantify that. They haven't quantified it. We have similar situations in a number of areas of town where they're trying to eliminate that. This is one where, because there's a willing seller, it provides them with the opportunity to eliminate that.
I would add, it's not the short-term cost of plowing that street, Commissioner. If you think about it, it's the longer issue is a street that you have to maintain. I mean, we just went through this entire city with the Sweet Streets program that we're, going out on a 6-year program using our utility fees to pay for to redo every street in town. And probably by the time we're done with that, we're back to doing some of the overlay stuff again. So to be able to eliminate a stub street that is of very limited value to all the residents of the community, to have to pay for that is the bigger issue.
And that's what I'm asking, what that cost is long-term, not only yearly costs but what are the long-term costs? You're citing that it has long-term benefits, but you're not telling me what that cost is, right? So it's very anecdotal and it's not a real number, but we're purchasing this house for a real number.
Right. No, we don't have that, but again, it would seem to me it would be a common sense issue to take a look at that when you take a look at the maintenance and repair of a street. We could get those figures. We could try to get what does it take to do that. That's only one aspect of it. I mean, it is a good idea to get that property out of there. There's all kinds of other benefits and issues. for having that home out of there. So the potential, there's potential extra green space there. There's potential buffering. There's, in terms of landscaping, that's the ideal place to kind of buffer the rest of the neighbors that are left there. If you look at the plans long-term for that area, Commissioner, the plan is that it never was going to be simply that those apartments that are there would be abutting up against single-family homes. And if you're familiar with that, you realize that there's supposed to be a buffer in between those apartments and the single-family homes that are across the other side of the street. And so when you think about it, whether we do that acquisition and we keep it as a rental or whatever we do with it, at some point in time, hopefully we're going to be looking at more redevelopment, and that would be in that area the next thing that somebody would look at doing, because again, it's part of what we looked at in terms of sheltering the single-family homes from the apartment buildings, and it might be wise to go right down that street. And again, if we could acquire that with a developer and put in some more, maybe couple-story multifamily dwellings in there, again, to buffer against the single-family homes, that's been the plan all along. So there's another good reason for doing it.
And I would add, Madam Chair, that, in the staff report, we talk about either renting or selling this property. And we left it open that way, but the intention, our intention would be to rent it so that the HRA would retain ownership. As Executive Director Devich has stated, that's an area of the comprehensive plan. It's calling for a transition from the apartments, the Chamberlain apartments, to the single-family homes. I know on that block, I believe there's 7 homes. I know that a couple of those folks would like to sell, would like to move out and have that turn over to townhomes as that transitional buffer. And this would allow us to kind of help that land banking process to get toward that.
I think my concern is none of that was in the staff report, right? The staff report only really talked about 2 things about why you should consider this. And this has been my ongoing conversation of, if we are buying people's houses and we are spending people's tax money, I want to make sure we're having the conversation about the right reasons to buy it. Everything in the staff report really talks about the savings for vacating this, and it's not about the house, it was all about the garage, right? The garage is there. The staff report talks about leaving the house and renting it and moving the garage space. That the long term is not in here to talk anything about taking down that house to create a buffer for the rest of the houses. I just want to make sure that when we are spending people's money, right, because this is money that is the community's money, that we're spending money for one house, that we're doing it for the right reason overall. And I just want to make sure that we are having that conversation.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
To you, Commissioner, to any other commissioner, when you get the agenda out, you probably get this out on Thursday before the meeting. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. It didn't come out till Friday. We got the notice, but it didn't come out until Friday.
Then it went out on Friday. When you look at that packet on Friday, probably when you get it, if you see that there's something like that you need more information on, it would be great if you would call us on Friday after you get it, or call us first thing Monday morning. If you have that kind of concern, staff could easily do a replacement staff report and put those kinds of things in it and be able to address it. It's a lot easier to do that and make sure everybody has that before we get to the meeting than to sit here and do it now. So that would be appreciated as well.
I think
Thank you.
every time we've had this on the consent agenda, I have asked for it to be removed and said anytime we are purchasing property, I want to talk about it. So this shouldn't be new. It shouldn't have come up on Friday. I think you can go back and read the past couple times we've had stuff on the consent calendar, and I've asked it to be removed.
No, Commissioner, you're missing my point. I'm not saying anything about removing it from consent. I'm saying that you're saying that there wasn't items in the staff report that you felt should be there. What I'm saying is, when you saw that on Friday, Commissioner, give us a call. We'll be glad to deal with it. Even if you call us on Monday morning, we'll be glad to deal with it. If there's pieces missing that you want to have, let us know. We'll get it in there. We'll get new staff reports out to all the commissioners. Okay?
Are there any other questions or concerns, Mr. Elliott?
It's not a question. It's on the purchase price. We've got differing numbers. 3A purchase price calls for the purchase price for the property is $290,000 in cursive and shows 248 in numeric. I know it's 248, so I'm just suggesting we get the proper numbers in both places.
Yeah, and if I could go into a little more detail on the numbers.
No, I read the numbers. I'm comfortable with the numbers. I just say we got to have consistency in what the number is. It's 3A, John. It says 290 in cursive and 248 in numeric, with 62,000 that is relocation costs. So the total price is 310. 290 and 62 doesn't equal 310. Is that what it shows on yours?
Where, I'm not sure where the
3A,
290,
purchase price for property and additional payments in closing.
Are you looking at?
I'm looking at the purchase agreement.
The purchase agreement, okay, that was what the question was. Okay, the draft purchase agreement.
Correct.
And we go down to 3A. Oh, you are correct. The words and the numbers don't match.
all right, thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's that.
Yep,
So 248,000 is the correct amount?
oh, yep, okay, thanks for catching
Yeah.
that.
All right.
Just one quick comment. I think the staff report indicates both kind of the dollars and cents argument, but also some of the screening and the benefit at the Chamberlain Apartments, which is something I believe we talked about, just that area when we talk about the Chamberlain. This has some dollar and cents merits, but I think some common sense merits too.
If my recollection is correct, I know that we went on a couple of tours over there, and the owner of the home had some concerns about it butting up, and I think that this is as much a consideration for her and as acquiring the property and having that additional land to work with and everything. So I think there were numerous reasons, and I recall the owner being here a couple times and having a number of discussions with her about just being isolated right in that particular location. So a lot of different reasons for the acquisition. I think all legitimate.
In the answers that Mr. Stark was giving earlier, you mentioned about perhaps that there might be others that are interested, so something could come before us in the future with other situations.
Yeah, that's a function of reviewing our budget again for acquisitions to see if there's the ability to do so. We feel comfortable with this purchase, but we'll look at it going forward for other potential purchases.
Okay, do you have any other further questions?
I plan on voting no for this. I think we're not being very transparent. I did receive a phone call from Mr. Stark about some other various reasons of why we may be talking about this that I think we aren't talking about here, but I also don't feel like ours is my place to say, so I'm not okay with us buying this. I think this is government work at its worst, to be honest, that we're not really talking about the real reasons, so I plan on voting no.
All right, any further comments? All right, we have the motion before us. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All right, please note that for the record. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 4, consideration of the adoption of a resolution approving a fair housing policy. Mr. Devich.
Yes, again, Chair, I'm going to turn this over to Julie Urban to make this presentation.
Chair Supple, members of the HRA. The Federal Fair Housing Act prohibits housing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. In addition, the Minnesota Human Rights Act adds the following protected classes: sexual orientation, marital status, status with regard to public assistance, and creed. Cities have 2 obligations under the FHA. First, cities must refrain from intentional discrimination because of someone's protected class status. Second, city policies and practices cannot have a greater effect on those protected classes. And third, if a city receives federal funds relating to housing or urban development, for example, Section 8 funds and community development block grant funds, then the city must affirmatively further fair housing. In addition, the Metropolitan Council is right now recommending that cities adopt local fair housing policies to actively affirm their obligations under the Fair Housing Act to furthering fair housing and ensuring access to and availability of housing for all. Based on that recommendation, staff is proposing that that the city of Richfield adopt a local fair housing policy in which the city, the HRA, and the EDA will commit to the following external and internal practices. The intake and referral of fair housing complaints, although I do want to point out that the city does not have the authority to process or decide those complaints, but we can provide information and referrals so that those are properly dealt with. The second thing that we would commit to doing is to make available on our website and in person information regarding fair housing and to make it available in the native languages of our residents. The third thing is we would train staff and public officials on fair housing. We would conduct periodic analyses of the city's housing inventory and codes, and we would consider fair housing issues when reviewing development proposals and apply the city's inclusionary housing policy to developments that receive city HRA or EDA assistance. And then finally, we would seek community input, particularly from underrepresented members of the community with regard to fair housing, zoning, and development issues. The city, HRA, and EDA currently do many of these activities, and adopting a policy affirms these practices and makes our intentions transparent. In addition, the policy furthers the goal of creating a community that advances equity and inclusion for all its residents. And I would point out, the Metropolitan Council is recommending that we adopt a local policy. They are also requiring that we adopt a local policy if we want to spend Livable Communities Demonstration Act funds. And we are in line to receive some of those funds. We should hear the final word in the next week and a half for the Cedar Point 2 development. So there is a timing issue involved here because we would like to accept that $1.2 million that we're anticipating being awarded. And so we do need to have a policy in place in order to do that. So if you have any questions, I can answer those. I will say also that this policy was based on a model that was provided by the Metropolitan Council, prepared by the Housing Justice Center. But as always, we made some adjustments for our size and resources and feel like this is a fit for who we are.
Thank you. Would someone like to move the resolution?
I'd move to adopt a resolution approving a fair housing policy.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I guess the only thing I would call out is it does, just some of the topics in here brings in mind the discussions we've had on the inclusionary housing policy and really does feel grounded in things the city's already moving forward on, already doing.
I'm super glad we're doing this. One thing I think, as we look at this the next upcoming year, how we can really help out in regards to number 6 in seeking community input, particularly from underrepresented members of the community. How can we be better at that? So,
I agree that that is a goal that we need to work on. Any other comments? I think we've come a long way and we want to keep trying to do better and better all the time. If there are no further comments, all in favor of adopting the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've adopted a fair housing policy. Moving on is item number 5, consideration of the approval of a contract for private development between the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and Andrus Custom Homes Incorporated for the redevelopment of 6933 Oliver Avenue South under the Richfield Rediscovered Credit Program. Mr. Devich.
May I just interrupt for a second? Weren't we just talking about consideration of the fair housing? Okay.
Yeah, and we adopted that. So
All
now
right,
we're at
yeah,
number 5.
Yeah, I was jumping ahead. I apologize. I'm back on track.
Okay, cool. Mr. Devich?
Okay. Thank you, Chair Supple, members of the HRA. Kate Aitchison's going to make the next presentation to the HRA.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Andrus Custom Homes, our builder, is applying for a Richfield Rediscovered Credit to redevelop the property at 6933 Oliver Avenue South. The builder would remove the existing substandard home, split the oversized lot into 3 separate lots, and construct 3 single-family homes. Each new home would be a 2-story home with 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and an attached 2-car garage. The new homes will be approximately 2,000 square feet with an approximate end value of around $430,000. Regardless of the number of new homes that would be built on the site, the single $50,000 credit would apply to the project because the removal of one home would would be exchanged. For one home, there's one credit. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Do we have any questions? I know there was a great deal of discussion about this at the previous council meeting. All right, would someone like to put it on the table?
I would move to approve and authorize execution of a contract for private development between the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and Andrus Custom Homes for the redevelopment of 6933 Oliver Avenue South.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Thank you for putting in the inclusionary housing policy numbers in here, that we are meeting those, so that makes me happy to see that.
That was one of the questions that came up
Yeah.
at the council meeting, so.
And we will continue to monitor it with our new home program. We currently have 2 lots reserved for Habitat for Humanity, and so that's things you'll see moving forward. And we'll continue to look for opportunities for our scattered site affordable new construction.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? We have a motion before us. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. We've approved and authorized the execution of the contract for private development. All right. Item number 6 is consideration of the approval of a contract for private development between the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and Andrus Custom Homes Incorporated for the redevelopment of 7420 Sheridan Avenue South under the Richfield Rediscovered Program. Mr. Devich.
Again, thank you, Chair Supple, members of the HRA. Again, I'm going to ask Kate Aitchison to make the presentation.
Thank you again. This will sound familiar. Andrus Custom Homes, our builder, is applying for an additional credit for a new lot, another property in Richfield. The property at 7420 Sheridan Avenue. Builder would remove again the existing substandard home and construct a new home on the property. This is a 75-foot lot, and so the new home would be a bit larger, 2-story home with 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and attached 3-car garage. This new home would be approximately 2,200 square feet with a minimum end value of $439,900. And again, I can answer any questions you might have.
All right. Would someone like to make the motion?
At the request of Commission Member Sue Sandall, I would move the consideration of the approval of a contract for private development between the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and Andrus Custom Homes for the redevelopment of 7420 Sheridan Avenue South under the Richfield Rediscovered Program.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved and authorized the execution of the contract for private development. And I see that Mr. Andrus and some of the homeowners are present for the last 2 items, so thank you to all. Next, we're going to move on to HRA discussion items. I had a question about the January meeting, because normally we don't have it on Martin Luther King Day and we move it to the next night, but that's the city council.
That's the city council night. I'm sorry, you asked me that question, I didn't get back to you. It was a busy week last week. I think we've been moving it to the following Monday, which would make it the 26th.
The 28th of January?
Let me make sure we have a good answer for you, and I will let you know this week.
All right, because we still have another month or so. I
Yeah.
just was trying to figure out with the city council meeting how that would all work.
Yeah, it's the same thing every year, because the HRA meets on the 3rd Monday, and Martin Luther King Jr. Day and President's Day are also the 3rd Mondays, and so it's always a recurring.
The thing that's the problem, though, is this time the 4th Tuesday followed the 3rd Monday, so you can't just bump it to Tuesday because this.
Yep.
Okay,
What if tentatively we planned on the prior Monday, January 14th?
Any of those would be fine with me. I just didn't know which way we were going to go.
Okay, we will get back to you.
get
I
back
shouldn't be
to
doing this on the fly.
It was just weird that it fell, because normally the city council meeting is not the
See,
next
one
night.
thing you'll all be comfortable with, eventually you'll run into the situation like Mr. Devich and myself. We don't worry that far ahead because we don't know what's going to happen between now and then. So there's some comfort in that, right, Mr. Devich?
There's a lot of comfort in that.
All right, so, Mr. Devich, we're going to put you on the spot now because we realize this is your last HRA meeting. So we wanted to thank you for all your service to the community. I think you've been executive director of the HRA since 2004. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And I know you've been with the city for 38 years, so you have a lot of experience, and we've all benefited from that. So thank you so much for all of your service. We didn't want to have you just go off onto the horizon without us saying thank you, and I don't know if anybody else wanted to add anything.
You're very welcome. I've always enjoyed HRA meetings, and I started attending them because I was acting director of the HRA for a lot of years before 2004 as well. And I remember the very, very earliest years that I started attending HRA meetings, and I do remember in those early years, Mike Freeman was a member of the HRA back then. So that goes way back, way back. But it's, you know, the HRA, you get the opportunity to do a lot of great things. And when you look at the changes in this city, sometimes it's been house by house, and sometimes it's been area by area. But whenever you're doing redevelopment, it's much harder than doing, you know, greenfield development, because every time you touch something, you're touching someone else's home, someone else's yard, someone else's property, and it's not easy to do. But I think when you look at the first-ring suburbs around this Twin City area, and if you look at the first-ring suburbs across the country, they're all in pretty bad shape. But I think Richfield is way far ahead of the curve in terms of what we're doing with keeping up with our infrastructure, that we have never let our housing go down. And I always tell people, drive through any block in Richfield, and I defy you to tell me where there's a bad-looking block. You know, there may be a property that doesn't look as good as you think it should look, but you'll never find a whole block in Richfield that doesn't look good. And it's pretty hard to ride through other first-ring suburbs and be able to say that. So, you know, kudos to the HRA and to all the HRA members that I've had the pleasure of serving with over the years. And just thank you.
Well, thank you. Did anyone else want to add anything?
You know, I would love to, but I have to give serious consideration that over the course of the next 8 or 9 days, I'm going to be making a lot of speeches about Mr. Devich, and I have to marshal my words and my thoughts. I had an opportunity to sit with Neil last week, and he was doing a podcast and some other things, and he asked me a series of questions and everything. And I'm not going to look back. I can't even begin to compute when we think of an 8-hour day, 40-hour week, and how many evenings, whether it's with the HRA or the city council or whatever, that Steve's been over here, and the planning that goes into it and everything. So in terms of, you know, when we sit and do budgets and talk about salaries and everything, and there's always a consideration that Mr. Devich had to match salary raises with the staff and the union members are getting, trying to keep some equity in everything, regardless of the disparity in the salaries themselves. But I can honestly say that had he negotiated an overtime clause in his salary, we would have been broke. And that's in all sincerity, given the amount of time the job requires that's out of sight and not public or anything like that. But it's a true devotion to his adopted city in terms of the time he spent taking care of all those things and keeping everything on the right course. And the one thing, and I'll say this tonight, and I'll say it every time, Neil asked me what my wish was for Steve in the future. And, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can think of. And honestly, the first thing comes to mind is just be happy. I don't care what you do, where you do it, just be happy. That's my sincerest wish.
Well, I'll save a grand farewell for the council meeting coming up, but when I think of specifically to the HRA, what comes to mind in my time on the HRA is how much the work here really is about this kind of puzzle, so to speak, where you're sort of putting together the pieces of Richfield's future, one little piece by one little piece, each so hard and difficult and unique and challenging. And just that's been one big puzzle for 30 plus years. And when you look at the pieces of it out in the city right now, it's pretty exciting. And including, I hope you had a chance to get some donuts this week over on. Okay, all right, well, little by little. And so I won't go much beyond that, but just particularly the HRA, it's sort of, you kind of see the grand plan, where we've been and where we're going, and it's bright.
Do we have any other discussion items?
I was just going to chime in and say, I haven't been on the HRA very long, and while you and I may not always agree on how to get there, I think we both, and what I've always appreciated is your love for making Richfield greater. So I think we both have the end goal in mind, but
I'm sure we do. I'm sure we do.
well, lots of good conversations about how to get there.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Are there any other discussion items? All right, we'll move to the executive director's report.
Thank you. I have no particular report.
Oh, okay. Claims and payroll.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any discussion or questions? All in favor of approving claims and payroll, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved claims and payroll, and the meeting stands adjourned.